Hey guys, and welcome to a showdown featuring myself with a White Lion themed build up against Dappy and the forces of the Tomb Kings here. We're going to be on Tarantula Coast Isles South as well, so a pretty fun match, or a map, sorry, which does of course have this kind of central pocket that armies often do get funneled into, so we'll have to see if one of us does fall into that trap. Now for my build, of course I said before, it's going to be White Lion themed, so everyone apart from my Lord is going to have a White Lion in their name. So for the front battle line, of course, we have the White Lions of Therese here. Decent infantry, kind of mid-tier, coming in with that AP axes as well, as coming in with Lion's Cloak, which is going to give them a nice cheeky 30% missile resistance, which is always quite good. We have the pure main company in the centre of the front battle line as well. Regiment of Renowned version, just to give a bit more kind of steady hand in that pocket, as well as Guardian as well, in case my Mighty Eagle does indeed decide to land. On either flank as well, we have double War Lines of Therese. These guys incredibly fast, decent AP, slightly squishy in their low number count, but can still certainly do a decent amount of damage. And as we see, we have the Rahagras Pride bounding towards us here. The Regiment of Renowned version, who do come with the Mighty Roar, -8 leadership and -25 speed, is very potent. In my personal kind of experience, anything which lowers speed in multiplayer tends to be relatively good. And that in the centre here as well, just behind the main battle line, we do have double line chariots as well. Heavy chariots dragged into battle by giant lions. Can certainly do a decent number over on their enemy infantry, but also have okay AP values as well to help kind of pin in some of the larger constructs. And up in the skies, we have an Archmage of Light Magic here coming in with the Book of Hearth as well as the Armour of the Stars to try and keep her protected as much as possible. Arcane Conduit, and then we have the Bronus Time Warp, Net of Amantalk, and Far's Protection. The idea here is you pop an overgraded Far's Protection to give everyone that extra armor and defense, as well as the Bronus Time Warp on the lions, and hopefully they will turn into absolute lawn mowers. That is the battle plan at least. Now for my opponent build, he's gone a very stacked formation here with a bazillion skeleton warriors dotted all the way along the front line into the sunset. You can see we are heavily outnumbered here, and far more elite, I suppose. So a ton of skeleton warriors dotted all the way along with spearmen as well, and a central core of skeleton archers, including the Blessed Legion in that centre pocket, which do of course bring in that glorious armour sundrum. So a ton of archers in the centre, double Ushopti great bows as well as a gigantic bone giant who is going to be lining up a shot right now, no doubt aiming for that Archmage indeed. With a Necrotect down here on the ground, and we have an opponent with Light Magic coming with a Leech Priest with Bronus Time Warp as well as Net of Amantalk, as well as Nefero's Scroll of Mighty Incantations as well. For leadership, we do actually have someone you don't get to see terribly often here, the High Queen Khalida herself, doing kind of a surfing animation here, on top of a mighty sneaky snake, coming in with a Venom Wave, very cool title there. We have My Will Be Done, Blessings of all sorts, and the Curses. But coming in, Poison, pretty decent duelist, and should be able to go toe-to-toe with my Archmage if she, of course, does decide to land. So without you guys, let's get this battle underway. So Book of Hearth has been popped as well by the Arcane Mage here, and popping Armour of Stars as well to now make her unspottable, so none of these archers should be targeting her anymore. And at this point I was looking across the field and I was dreading this battle a little bit. I did originally have Banishment on my Lord, and that had been beautiful in such a stacked army here, but instead we're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way, lift those heavy axes and carve down my opponent. So White Lions are starting to get into position on the flanks, going to be darting for the trees here. They of course do have that Lion Pelt, which gives them a little bit of missile resistance, not quite as much as the normal White Lions, but still 20% isn't too bad at all. Contemplated going in with the Lion Chats, was a bit worried about getting stuck in with like so many troops, so we're going to be pushing them to the flanks as well and waiting for the main battle line to engage before we do kind of come in to try and overwhelm the flanks. But we're taking quite heavy damage here on the chariots straight out of the gate, and now the pure main company is the focus of attention. Archmage still just floating up in the skies, kind of half hiding behind these rocks for now. Armour of Stars actually lasts for a considerable amount of time, so it's now going to be pushing forward, getting ready to cast that magic as we do start to kind of swoop around the flanks and try and get a bit of a surround. You can see the War Lions have popped in the back, but my opponent is not being idle here. He's repositioning his spearmen on the back lines to protect the Ushopti, and does drop a net in the front line. However, we are going to be popping in a Bronus Time Warp here, and upgraded as well. Is going to turn these guys into a bit of killing machines here. 24 melee attack and 24 speed buff is certainly impressive. we're looking to kind of grind our way through the front line as quickly as possible. Looks like we're also getting that upgraded fast protection as well. A little bit late on that, but still going to be helping our troops out quite a bit. Lion Chats have now pummeled in from either flank, trying to push back onto the skeleton archers. And as you can see, they're simply dragging their way through the spearmen, trying to shut down the range potential of my opponent's build. The ones on this flank have taken a bit of damage, but once again are going to be kind of grinding their way through. Now, Warlines did manage to pop on some new Shopti, but did basically no damage there. And as some Spearmen did kind of appear, we did have to pull back where possible for once again kind of attempting to push into the back lines, as the Warlines do hunt down the Shopti great bows, slamming them in the rear here. But there's a lot of Spearmen nearby, so it's pretty scary stuff. Rahagra's Pride is alive and well, although Spearmen have managed to drive them back. So they are going to be falling back and are looking to swoop in kind of more rear positions. So the Archmage has taken a few hits here, as the armour has worn off. The Bone Giant and Ushopti did some good damage, and it looks like an Overcast as well there has actually hammered us pretty badly. However, the Warlines are now on top of the Ushopti, trying to shut them down, but they're really struggling to actually do consistent damage to these guys. So they're not doing too bad. I suppose they're fast and they've gone in there at least and have shut them down. Looks like we are managing to make some of these units waver now. The Shopti Summon has gone down in the front line, trying to pin in the White Line infantry, who have slowly been forcing their way through. As you can see, the front line of my opponent's army is slowly starting to crumble, just a few units remaining. Skeleton Spearmen have been hit by a mighty roar as well, as kind of trying to break the leadership on a few of these units. But the war lines are slowly being terrified and driven back here. My opponent is popping some really nice bonus time warps down as well to buff up the Ushopti and keep them fighting well. Looks like we do come in with one of our own as well. Archmage still just chilling out here. Probably wants to be pulling back into these trees, as if my opponent does get some of their archers free and this Armour of Stars does wear off, could be in a little bit of a pickle there. We have more white lines now pushing in. Balance power is heavily against us, however. Could be due to the fact that the Shopti have been summoned, but also how low our leader is. Because apart from that, battle's not going too badly. We have a ton of white lines still quite healthy and active, pushing into the back line, and the line chariots as well, whopping in with over 100 speed when they have the bonus time warp popped on them. Are still alive and active. Looks like a bit of friendly fire as well, as the Bone Giant does shoot a Shopti member, as the Rahagra's Pride launches itself in here, pulling down skeleton and character alike, really trying to focus down the Necrotect at the moment and get them off the field where possible. The Great Bow, though, is lining up here on top of the Archmage, and my opponent pops a net of Amantok. On this point, I'm like, oh no! The Bone Giant is kind of lining up shots, but he keeps stuttering himself and failing, but does finally get a shot up and misses. Unfortunately for the Archmage, despite their luck there, one of the Ushopti units, despite crumbling here, is going to be in guard mode and continue to fire in. And the Archmage is going to be running for the hills here, down 12 health, and down the Mighty Eagle goes, crashing into the ground. And a ton of my forces breaking and running for the hills here, but we still do have a few saving graces. We have a ton of white lines left mixed in here, as well as the Rahagra's Pride and the like, and chariots as well can do some decent cycle charging. They've just been dragging themselves back and forth through this engagements, and getting some pretty ridiculous kills. 166 on one unit, now triple chevron is some very impressive stuff, although war lines are starting to flee as well, and that's going to be a big problem, is the leadership at this point. We of course have the big terror-causing Bone Giant on the field, which is going to be a big problem, and the white lines are starting to waver all over the field. Despite having so many numbers left, they would easily be able to carve up the kind of remaining spearmen and then hopefully surround the opponent's single entities is the battle plan. As looks like a bonus time warp, though, it has been popped down by my opponent. All of a sudden going to turn the Shopti into pretty decent melee combatants, as well as the Bone Giant into a bit of a wrecking ball. Have it down here. Looks like we have managed to surround the Leech Priest there. Should be going down pretty quickly. Yes, he does have the buffs to do a bit of damage himself, but white lines of Tracer are pretty decent AP combatants all round. His health should be dropping relatively quickly here. We do have the Rahagra's Pride once again coming in for a charge, trying to focus down the Shopti Great Bows and force them off the field, and allow the Lion Chariots just to pull apart the Spearmen. As you can see, the Spearmen were wavering a little bit there. We do pop down at the Mighty Roar as well to ensure these Ushopti cannot escape here, and to try and lower their leadership so perhaps we can get them to crumble. Looks like Ushopti, though, were doing some 360 no-scopes in combat there, it seems. And so once again, a lot of my forces do start to break, and army losses actually kicks in here, guys. And unfortunately, the mighty White Lion forces are going to be running for the hills, and it is going to be a valiant defeat for myself and the forces of the High Elves here. So very well played to my opponent. Pretty abrupt end in there, and that's pretty much how I felt during the game. It seemed to army losses kicking quite early on. We still had a ton of White Lions left and active, but without the leadership of the Archmage, unfortunately, the High Elf forces broke heart and ran for the hills. So very well played to Dappy there. Really awesome play, keeping his Ushopti on kind of active, I suppose, as long as possible, despite the fact they got compromised multiple times. Continued to manage to shoot and assassinating the Archmage. Every time she popped up and the armor kind of faltered for her, then he instantly, you know, pinged on to that target, got the Bone Giant, got the Ushopti, doing that awesome damage and dragging down the Archmage. So very impressive stuff all around. I also love the High Queen Khalida pick here. Not a character you get to see terribly often, and I think that's mainly due to the fact the other characters, Setcha and Arkan, are just so powerful that you don't get to see her too much, but she's pretty decent all around. As for my forces, didn't quite have enough in the tank left in the end. Massive kills for pretty much every unit, apart from some of the war lines themselves, who were kind of trying to focus down some of the larger constructs there. But the chariots, 102 and 177 kills. Massive damage, did a great job as well, shutting down the skeleton archer plate. Probably should have darted in there a little bit early on, and you know, back to my mass to kind of pull out and not take too much damage, because the archers did manage to get some value before they got in there and did some pretty decent work. Files Protection and the bonus Time Warp combo is an old classic of the Light Mage, and I think it does some pretty good work here as well. Certainly allowed those White Lines of Trace to push through. I think the biggest misplays by me was simply allowing the Archmage to get shot. Should have kind of darted behind some trees or just flown miles away from the battlefield into the Ushopti were actually kind of fully dealt with, because then also the leadership broke, and as of course I'm already outnumbered and have low model count, so once we start losing a lot of models, our forces did break and run for the hills. Anyway guys, hope you did have a good time, and hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to give it a big old thumbs up and subscribe for more Total War Warhammer content, and yeah, feel free to join my Discord. There is a link in the description down below, so you can submit your own replays, get involved in tournaments, King of the Hills, and the like, and feel free to comment and all that standard good stuff. Anyway guys, until next time, peace, and as always, stay awesome.